This is the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best tips and strategies in the world to help you become a smarter, more effective tennis player. You'll hear interviews with Pro Tour doubles players and coaches, including easy-to-use lessons to improve your game and win more matches. My name is Will Bocek, founder of the Tennis Tribe, doubles strategy coach, and host of the show. In this episode, I talk with Steve Smith from Great Base Tennis. Now, Steve has been coaching tennis for nearly 50 years, and he probably has more tennis knowledge in his left pinky than I have in my entire body. He has so much knowledge of every single aspect of the industry, of the coaching profession, and of the game in general. And you're going to hear that through a lot of stories that he tells. He likes to give advice and teach through stories, and you'll learn that early on in this conversation. Steve has coached at literally every level of the game. He's coached juniors, rising pro players, current pro players. He's worked with federations, universities, associations in over 30 countries. And his former students are also now coaches of academies across the world, pro players, things like that. So he has so much knowledge that what you'll find in this conversation is I try to guide it a little bit less than I normally would and kind of let Steve tell his stories and let him talk a little bit. So what I think you're going to find is there's going to be 3 or 4 different stories that Steve tells that are going to really stick with you, hit home with you, and help you improve your game. I know there's a few things from this conversation that I'm going to go back and listen to and take away for myself. We do talk a little bit about double strategy as well as volley technique. He talks a lot about using the proper grip on your volleys, which we're going to link to more of in the show notes. So this is a really wide-ranging conversation. It's definitely story intensive. He talks a lot about stories from the 70s, the 80s, how doubles has changed, and then recent stories. For example, the Cincinnati Masters that was just completed. He talks about a few matches in that. So this is a really fun conversation that I had with Steve. I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of it. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Coach Steve Smith. All right, and we're live here with Steve Smith from Great Base Tennis. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Will. Look forward to talking to you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this as well. Steve, I wanted to start, and before each show, I do a lot of research online of my guests, try to read a lot about them. And I read your description on greatbasetennis.com. And I wanted to start by just reading that to the audience. And then I want you to tell us kind of who you are and what you do and tell us a little bit about your story. But this is, as far as tennis coaches go, this is one of my favorite about page tennis descriptions that I've probably ever read. So it says, Steve Smith has close to 50 years of diversified experience. His life work has been studying tennis masters and methodologies. From an academic standpoint, Steve designed and developed the first comprehensive curriculum and degree plan for students seeking occupational competency as tennis teaching pro managers. He has worked as a tennis educator for families, federations, universities, and associations in over 30 countries. His former students work all over the world as teachers, coaches, and administrators. His students and his students' students have also had success at every level of competitive tennis. So, Steve, there's a lot in that. Tell us, what do you do?
I tease people with my name being so common, Steve Smith, that at one time I had the world's record in the pole vault. I've been the quarterback at Michigan. I played in the NFL, the NBA. A lot of Steve Smiths in the world.
Right.
What do I do? I basically, for the most part, teach competitive juniors and teach tennis teachers. Although I've certainly, all my years in the game, I've done all sorts of early childhood development, adult tennis. But I would say right now with Great Base Tennis are trying to carry the torch for tennis teachers from the past. You hear the term old school. I always say old school, new school. There is no school. So in addition to helping junior tennis players and tennis teachers, we do spend a lot of time, and actually Andy Fitzell and his wife have helped out so much in the last few years. I've known Andy for 20 plus years, but we give out a lot of free educational content.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, people can check that out at greatbasetennis.com. And just reading the description and knowing what I do know about you, it does seem like you're both a coach and a coach for coaches. Is that accurate?
Yeah. The great John Wayne said, everyone's a coach because everyone gives advice. A lot of advice is free. And the reason it's free is not worth anything. But yeah, so my background, I told the story many times. I grew up in ice hockey. I'm a product of the tennis boom. James Van Allen invented the tiebreaker. First was on the scene in 1970, and then tennis could be packaged. Everyone in the 70s fell in love with tennis. I have an older brother who was getting a PhD in Russian studies. He studied Russian hockey and then other systems. Not knowing what I wanted to do for a living, back in the day, I used to hitchhike back and forth, and I was hitting some tennis balls. It's really a story of circumstance, but I remember Dave Eddy, who great guy, spent a lot of time with over the years. He's a teaching pro that introduced me to the tennis world from the hockey world. I put two and two together that I wasn't going to be in the NHL. I wasn't going to be a professional hockey player, but I could learn how to play tennis, which was really appealing to me, but also study tennis and then travel the world. So I made that transition very, very early. Before I was 20 years old. When I was 19 years old, I was just took the step, said, okay, I'm going to try to become a tennis teaching pro manager.
Okay. So you had played tennis, but you weren't thinking about like a professional tennis
I wasn't
career or anything?
I wasn't thinking about being a professional player at all. I'm not a silver spoon kid, but my parents got a job my parents found a job for me as a dishwasher in the Adirondack Mountains. And I was in a cabin, and next to the cabin were tennis courts, and I started banging some balls around. And then when I went to prep school, I really didn't play tennis, but my senior year, the headmaster reinstated a rule that most prep schools still have to this day, boarding schools in New England, especially, where you have to play a sport every season. So I'm a small guy, and I ran cross country to get in shape. And then, so when they reinstated a rule that the hockey players had to play a spring sport, I signed up for tennis. Okay. And even when I went to Oswego State initially, one of the SUNY schools in New York, and I even went out for the tennis team. But back in the day, you played three different sports. So the coach kept me on the tennis team. And all these years later, now I have a pretty good idea what the level was. It wasn't very high, to say the least. But when the ice was put in the middle of October, I told the coach, I said, hi, I have to quit. I'm here to play hockey. And he wasn't too happy with me. So I had an operation on my ankle. And my freshman year in playing college hockey. And the doctor gave me a few minutes of time for rehab. And he said, what are you going to do to get back in shape? And I said, I do a lot of distance running. He said, well, what else do you do? I said, I knock a few tennis balls around. And so that's where but I was told to become a tennis teacher, tennis coach, you have to learn how to play. So I did a hard 5 years of being a tennis player. When I was a perennial tennis bum in Boca Raton, Florida, did the whole live in a van, play tournaments. Okay. Because you can't afford to pay the rent. So I didn't really learn tennis through osmosis, and I was really misinformed. I was mistaught. I was given bad information and practiced for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of those, the misinformation, it still exists to this day. The tennis teaching profession, I mean, tennis is great, but it is a very unregulated profession, even to the point where use the word strongly, fraudulent, criminal. I mean, I get emotional. I just think about how poorly people are taught.
Hmm.
That's the fuel behind the Great Base and giving out free content. So many young players, beginning players at the adult level. It's really witchcraft.
Right.
Braden's our number one mentor. May 10th, 1976, Sports Illustrated, an article, Tennis is in the Stone Ages. And in many ways, it still is. But we can
Yeah.
get into that. And that's certainly, um, technique is first, and technique is really, it's just amazing how it just goes in circles. 2 + 2 equals whatever you want it to be. But technique, we always say technique equals tactics. Well, so when you start teaching someone how to hit a ball, or even, and I think it's great you have a website just for doubles.
Hmm.
Uh, you can tell by just someone's ready position that they're not going to be a great doubles player. It's a pretty
Sure.
safe.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. When I play tournaments or leagues, like we had a tournament this past weekend in Waco, and I'll go out and watch the 3-0, 3-5. I mean, all the way up to even 4-5, and sometimes even 5-0 players. Uh, I'll see a doubles match, and I'll see four different like forehand techniques or serve techniques, and some of them are just totally out of whack and confusing. And it is, um, yeah, I guess kind of strange that we've had so long to try to, as an industry, improve our teaching methodologies. And you said when you started playing a little bit more, you were given a lot of bad advice. What was the worst advice you were given?
Wow, amazing.
Do you
Tennis,
remember a specific one?
technical standpoint. I mean, I could just rattle off 20 points, boom, boom, boom. Um,
Or maybe pick three.
Come over the ball, arch your
Over the
back,
ball.
toss high for more time, snap down on the serve, stay down on your ground strokes. Just over and over again, there's just so many myths. Grips are so poorly taught.
Mm,
Um, Back in the day, I can remember reading Bud Collins's Tennis Digest, and the big emphasis was one grip. It made sense, just one grip for everything. Of course, that was back when 3 of the 4 Grand Slams were on grass, and
hmm.
most players just learned to play by hitting against the backboard. Backboards are built straight up and down.
Right.
Ideally, they be sloped at a 15-degree angle, and it's very conducive to having a continental grip. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest myths in tennis. The top players don't say what they do or do what they say, and so I think here in the U.S., where Jose Aguirre has had so much to do with the USTA, it's almost a continental grip.
Hmm.
Uh, Society just expects former players to be able to be teachers. But just because
Right.
someone can play the saxophone doesn't mean they can teach you how to play the saxophone.
Right.
And so, yeah, grips. I tell people I was recently in Boca Raton for a weekend with Andy Fitzell, and you're just driving around, and I said, if someone had just told me this, and we went by some tennis centers where I hit a bunch of tennis balls over and over and over again, spending hours and hours, for example, on a wall, really practicing inefficient movements.
Hmm.
And it's still, I've gone to so many tournaments with junior tennis players, and um, I can remember, for example, my youngest son, Connor, he's playing college tennis, and I said, well, I'm going to watch the clinic first, and I'll come in. And there's a clinic going on, and there's 6 courts here, and there's 6 courts in the back.
Hmm.
A lot of the college, there'll be the stadium in the middle. There's 6 courts on one side, 6 courts on the other. Well, I'm going to watch the junior program first, and then I actually in college tennis, you watch the doubles, and then they start the singles match. But then I'm going to go watch the junior
Right.
clinic. It's been a lot of time. I think that's something that really needs to happen in our country, around the world as well. Is there needs to be people that are in a position to police, regulate tennis teaching.
Hmm.
The USTA does it with umpires, where they have 4 or 5, 6 people who are on the staff, and they go and evaluate the performance of umpires, and that's how they progress and get to go to the US Open.
Right.
But Florida, for example, is the land of the car trunk pro. The discount hundred and tennis lessons are way, way too expensive. That's another side of it. But all you need is a ball hopper and an ego, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
So what about so let's dive into the grip a little more. You said one thing you said is the wall should be built at a 15-degree angle. Say more about that. Why is that?
Well, what happens is the players open the racket face. The continental grip opens the racket face at a 45-degree angle. You get that number, you turn the racket 8 times, that's 360 degrees. 360 divided by 8 is 45.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, there was a teaching device called the ball back. It was Stan Smith's name on it, Stan Smith ball back. And so if the wall is tilted back, then you can come and actually volley with a vertical racket face. Research and practice are so far removed in tennis. When the ball is below the level of the net, someone's hitting a deep volley. Mm-hmm. Racket face is open less than 10 degrees. So then to have kids be told continental grip, elbow in, have the racket face open, and then cut downward to chip your volley. That's one of the reasons that players don't go to the net. Now you're hard pressed. You go to a weekend tournament, you don't even see people volley. You can go to a 12 and under tournament. I with your emphasis to improve the game of doubles, people are playing one up, one back. We do know that beginners, they should go, when they go to the net, they go to lose at a faster rate.
Right.
So they stay back. And now all the way to college tennis, Division I.
Yeah, definitely.
On the men's side, people are playing one up, one back.
Yeah, I think most of them are, even for a lot of players, if they do win a higher percentage of points at the net, they're still less comfortable there. So they still don't want to go there, even though sometimes it can be a better win percentage. But you mentioned the degree of the racket. So you're saying if somebody hits me a ball and it dips below the net, my racket face is 10% open?
10 degrees, less than 10 degrees.
10 degrees, I'm sorry. Yeah.
The ball comes out of a ball machine at 30 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. And you change the angle of the racket face by 1 degree, ball goes 6 feet further. There's a lot more math to throw into that equation, but most of the time when people miss a volley, it's because the racket face is open. When they miss a volley long.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so we were gonna talk about volley technique later, but let's do it now. So what are most of the listeners are USTA 3.0, 3.5 up to maybe 4.5 level. What are some of the other common mistakes you see with volley technique?
Well, in doubles, players will favor their forehand volley. When a ball's coming right at someone, you have much more range of motion with a backhand volley when the ball comes right to you. So we'll say, okay, put the racket in your midsection and just go forward. Mm-hmm. It's not an ideal volley where your right arm is not extended, where you're hitting a one-handed backhand volley. But we see people do that all the time. Ball's coming right at them, and they favor their forehand volley. Mm. With having be told that there's no time to change grips. Dennis Vandermeer used to do a great job. He would say, what takes more time, to change your grip or not change your grip? It takes the same amount of time. Now, at a real high level, once someone organizes their feet, say from the service line in, they should be in a composite grip, which used to be called the Australian grip. So you just take the reference point, the base knuckle of the index finger and the heel pad, and it's in between the second and third panel. The second panel, if you just start at the top and go to the right, as for right-hander, the second panel is a continental panel. Mm-hmm. So it sounds like the airlines where you have continental and eastern, western. But and then when you hit an overhead, the ball is in the air because it's up as a lob. You have more time to change to a continental. When the ball goes to the backhand side, whether you have a one-handed volley or a two-handed backhand volley, definitely an emphasis on the one-hander. But you just have to change your grip this much. But it's like you have a chest pass in basketball and you push your hands out. But not only are you changing your grip, you want to change your arm. The grip determines the angle of racket face. The angle of racket face determines the angle of racket path. And it's just amazing how much downplay people have on volleys. Now, teaching pros, for the most part, that's how they hit all day. Right. They're taking speed off the shot, and they feel they have great control, and they're teaching by feel. and they're
Mm-hmm.
they're telling their students, well, this is how I volley. Well, that's how you volley in a tennis lesson, taking speed off the ball. And actually, underspin initially bounces higher than topspin. What makes a ball bounce high is trajectory. So in a teaching pro is hitting, many times they'll actually hit a ball with underspin, so it sets up for their student, and they're actually slowing the racket down. And anytime you open the angle of the racket face, you have to change. There's a lot of math. You have to change the angle of the racket path, but then slow the racket down. I think those two words, when you think about people making changes, where do they change the face or do they change the path? So what they really should do is change the face, get the racket face close to vertical, and then they go fast and forward. But because the racket face is open, what they do is they change the path of the racket. So most people go down on volleys.
So that's why I'm seeing so many people have their volleys kind of float up, and they don't understand why they're kind of popping up their volleys for the other team.
An underspin backhand is called the slice. We say the underspin drive. We know there's times, say for example, it becomes an emergency shot where you're absorbing pace and taking the ball out of the corner defensively, just trying to get the ball back. But the underspin backhand, and that's, you think about someone like a Stefan Edberg, or even going way back to Rosewall. Rosewall's famous underspin backhand, and that's our work from Braden, is the racket face was never tilted more than 10 degrees. Basically, his racket face was about 7 degrees. So it's a fun story with tennis history. Pancho Gonzalez, what slice? Rosewall didn't hit a slice backhand. He drove it. He was, and people hit up the highest level players. They're really hitting a penetrating approach shot. Right. It's almost like a golfer. They need a 2-iron and they're taking a 9-iron or a wedge out of their bag. They've got the wrong pitch with a racket face.
So that's interesting. So you're saying that a lot of the best volleyers may not have underspin on their volleys. Is that right?
Well, there's a famous tape with Brian Gottfried that Braden made years ago, and Gottfried was number 3 American. Great player, hard worker. And he was asked, he said, well, first I drive, I go forward to put stick on the volley, which means you get hit by a stick, and then they turn the racket underneath. By the time you feel the hit, the ball is approximately 7 to 11 feet away from you. It takes the ball's on its strings 3 to 6 milliseconds. To register the hit takes about 70 milliseconds. So again, by the time you feel the hit, it's really aftershock. So that's where it's a little bit dangerous. We know teaching is both a science and an art, but it's more harmful and helpful than tell someone, well, feel, it used to be peel the orange or let yourself massage the ball, come around the side of the ball. And
So one player I watched that came to mind for me is Jamie Murray. So when you watch him hit his volleys, and I don't know if he has the best volley technique or not, I have no idea, but he almost, it seems like he's putting topspin on a lot of his volleys. And he has the racket face, like you said, like pretty closed, probably close to vertical.
Well, Louis Caillet, people can get online, and Louis, a French Canadian, has been with the LTA for a long time. When he was with Canada, he ran what was called the action method. And Jamie gets so close to the net. It's amazing how courageous he is as far as going forward. I do think that's something when you're watching the very best players in the world, how spontaneous they are. The speed of the game and how they react. But I think it's for developmental players it's more like turning the clock back and, how did Jamie Murray play when he was younger? How did he volley to get to the level he's in? But I think at that level, it's so much with a serve. The point, it's almost like the point's over before it starts. But I think the volley to look at is, like say the Bryan brothers. The Bryan brothers were really influenced by Braden as well. Kathy Blake, their mother, is a really good tennis player. Wayne used to take them to Vic's tennis college. We spent a lot of time. Vic's library is now owned by the Tennis Channel, but within that library, there was film of Vic working with Bryan brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Bryan one time said to the Tennis Channel, for an hour and a half after school every day, our mom worked with us on strokes. But when you watch what the Bryan brothers do, once it's match play, it's so high speed. And I think what players that are coming up need to do is watch how they hit their first volley. Watch how they hit the first volley, because when you get all four players of it to net high level doubles,
it's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's very, very athletic. But those are the basics turned into instincts. That's where, like a Jamie Murray asking about his volley, you're going to see him all day long volleying like this. He's not going to be doing this on the forehand side.
Right.
It's amazing at a high level how many more backhand volleys the players hit, because they're going right at the body. The point ends three ways. Well, it ends as a winner, a plus, or an unforced error, minus, or a forced error, minus F. And at the highest level of doubles, almost every point ends as a minus F. And they're not going around them. They're not going over them. It's just like bulldozer tennis. They're going right through the middle. Mm-hmm. Everybody here is, to solve the riddle, go up the middle.
Mm-hmm. Right. So for that, it's funny that's one thing I teach a lot of the audience is to typically attack the backhand volley, because most players are so much more comfortable with their forehand volley, myself included. If you hit me 100 forehand volleys, I'll make, I don't know what the percentage is, but definitely more than 100 backhand volleys.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I make the mistake of, today's tennis, people are not volleying continental on both sides. Years ago, that was the case. So the forehand volley was the weaker volley years ago. But now, look at Nadal. He's much better on the forehand volley. Now, he volleys so well because he's so athletic. He closes in, but he has so much downplay on the backhand volley. Today, you do see most players with a composite grip on the forehand, but they also volley with a composite grip on the backhand. There's a lot more drawbacks because it's an almost continental grip. The grip's not far enough over, so the angle the racket face is open. If you don't change your grip, you have to change your wrist. So you see a lot of players trying to do this because they don't have a very good grip. You go to a college tennis match, Division I, so there's 12 players on the court, and then you just take a survey, and you're hard pressed to just have one player of the 12 have a really good backhand volley where they have a backhand grip, and they just have to change their grip this much. You've just got to be able to drive it going forward.
Do you have a racket laying around? Can you show us some of the grip on the video?
No, there's not a racket in here.
You don't? Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll email you after the show and get a video from you. I'm sure you have like a YouTube video or something on grips.
Yeah.
We can, we'll find something and link to some resources because this seems pretty important for the volley technique.
Yeah, the racket's an octagon. I apologize, I don't have a racket in the room, but
no, it's okay.
People could sit in a chair for 5 minutes. That's another Braidism. For 5 minutes a day, just for your first 5-10 days. And like we tell kids all the time, you go back, you're riding in the car with your parents back home after your tennis training session, is actually just practice changing grips. Mm-hmm. Anything you're going to be going good at, it has to be rehearsed over and over and over again.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So we're we'll link to more of that in the show notes, and I'll chat with you after the show about that, about some good resources for that. But let's dive into some more double strategy. So I already heard you touch on, the pros, they're controlling the middle of the court. They're mostly forcing errors. That's typically how a point ends. How should a 3-0 to 4-5 level doubles player think about double strategy overall? How would you coach them?
Well, it's a big difference between a 3-0 and a 4-5, as you know.
So let's start with 3-0 then.
I'll say this is that we've worked with players, say they're a 3-5, and if they want to go be trained like a junior, well, a year later, they're definitely going to be closer to a 4-5. Mm-hmm. And then there's less people to play with. For years, I used to go to Atlanta And
Hmm.
Atlanta it's amazing how much tennis there was played because it's interesting. Like say here in Florida, what happens? There's a golf course built, and then there's luxury homes and townhouses, and there's a small
Hmm.
tennis center.
Yeah.
And many parts of Florida, you need to have a the facility needs to be supervised.
Hmm.
You have to man the facility because there's clay courts. But in Atlanta, there's just one subdivision after another subdivision that has really a nice set of hard courts, 4, 6, 8.
Hmm.
And if you say you have two right-handed players play 3-0 and they want to win, you make one stand to the outside of the court where they just hit all forehands, and one stands in the middle and they all hit forehands. And you say, okay. And I say ladies because men, they don't even take lessons. The macho male ego. It's like years ago before we had GPS, and the man would never stop the car and ask for directions. A
Right.
woman would ask for directions.
Uh-huh.
So the men aren't even taking lessons. At night they're banging balls and having a beer. But this is club tennis, so you put the one right-handed lady here and the one right-handed lady here. They're at the baseline. You say never go to the net.
Hmm.
Now with the serve, you tell them put the racket in the pizza position, just toss, tap, aim right to the middle of the court. In Shepard Mead's book, he wrote a famous book in the 50s, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. He wrote a book, lots of tennis books here behind me, How to Succeed in Tennis Without Really Trying. So you take the role of the spoiler.
Mm.
You don't go to the net because you can't hit an overhead. You don't go to the net
Right.
because you can't hit a volley. So you just stay back, and then the players just move this way, hitting forehands. There's no forehand, backhand. It's just I'm covering the court
Okay.
this way, I'm covering the court this way, and you can get some people mad at you. But that's if you say, ladies, do you want to win? This is
Yeah.
how.
Do you want to win or do you want to get better?
A lot of times the club pro is, they're just listening to people's social agenda. They're standing at the net post.
Sure.
I mean, people have been in an indoor club where the court's very expensive, and get myself in trouble with the gals again. That 4 women will come out and they just stand at the net post chatting. It's a very expensive indoor court. Um, so, basically to teach really good doubles, you say, okay, we're going to play and we're going to lose the right way. If we
Hmm.
lose the right way, we're eventually going to win. For 10
Yeah.
years,
So I think the audience is more interested in that.
for 10 years,
I
I was
hope
in
at
charge.
least.
For 10 years, I was in charge of a junior college tennis team. It's one of those things where the rules much different than the NCAA's. It's a municipality in Tampa, Hillsborough Community College. There's 28 courts, and with gender equity, there was no men's team. There's just a
Mm.
women's team. And, we said, well, you're going to have a palm down serve or you're not going to play. We're not going to let anybody play with a palm up serve. And we're
Hmm.
going to make everyone go to the net. And you're here for 2 years. If we're going to lose, we're going to lose the right way.
Right.
And what happened, Chad Burial, who's now at St. Leo, he won a national championship when he was working with us. He was with us for 5 years. He told me that not one player left the program and where they trained and they played with us or on a junior college team. Many of them had scholarships afterwards to play a 3rd and 4th year. Not one of them was told to continue to go to the net. Toughest thing in tennis at every level now is if you're a serve and volley doubles player is how to find a partner who serves and volleys.
Mm.
Nancy Ritchie was a great player, and she was more comfortable coming in behind an approach shot. So Billie Jean King had won 21, or she won 21 titles at Wimbledon. But when she played with Nancy Ritchie, she knew Nancy was more comfortable coming in off the approach shot, so they came in this way. Billie would stay back, and they would both come in this way.
Okay.
So, I was talking to one of my former students from 40 years ago, Mike Custer. He ran a program for adults and said, you're not going to play for the first year. And, it really takes some time and teach people, even long before there was the red ball and the orange ball, to just take a Nerf ball and say, okay, we're going to play mini tennis. We're going to play touch tennis, really. You figure just playing with a regular ball. And, just to come into that, because most adult tennis players are afraid of the net. They have
Right.
fear of being hit, a greater fear of looking bad. Tennis is so difficult for an entry level adult. I mean,
Mhm.
Dick Braden used to say that adult tennis players I could quote Vic all day, is they buy the clothes and they wear them to the grocery store because, they bought the outfit, they took a few lessons. We don't teach people how to practice together. I think of Tom Stowe, who was at the Berkeley Tennis Club, who mentored Don Budge, who mentored Dennis Vandermeer, a great player and a great teacher. At his club, everybody would have a basket of balls and people would be feeding balls to each other. Years ago, people only took a private lesson. There weren't programs, there weren't clinics, there weren't academies. You just took a private lesson, and then you need to go out and hit the backboard. But mini tennis was huge. Just to go out and play tap tennis, just touch the ball.
Right. So, what are some common mistakes you see for this, let's say 3-5 level player, as far as double strategies? It sounds like going to the net is a big one.
Well, if people are if they were just taught on a green light point from Bill Jacobson, when you're serving or even when you're returning, say when you're up or you're down, you're up 40 love. If every 12-year-old knew this, well, I'm up 40 love. The math is on my side to take a chance. I'm going to hit a body serve. Say I'm playing singles. I'm going to hit a body serve straight ahead. So the return comes back straight ahead. Or it's doubles. I'm just going to aim to the middle of the box because I want to get my serve in. I want to get my serve in. Braden, he was at Toledo and he was an assistant basketball coach, but he was assigned to teach tennis. And he took the basketball players. He said, just put a racket like this, big, tall athletes, toss, tap, and charge the net. And the goal is really to be a wall at the net. And, the scoring system really confuses people. If you go to the net and you win 2 out of 3 points, that turns into 4 out of 6, 8 out of 12. So you learn by making mistakes. When you are at the net, regardless of what level, is you're forcing, you're dictating the point. Now, what does happen, say 55 and over? Sure. Maybe it's 45 and over, but 55 and over is that you can't close in as much because probably the most difficult movement is to go back for an overhead. Yeah. Absolutely. So teams become so easy to lob. And we know that, club players will say, okay, you take my side, I'll cover my side, you cover your side, or, I'll cover up at the net. But all you have to do is then chart. But I think also then is application, is how to teach. If someone's teaching, club tennis, social tennis, okay, we're going to feed the ball in and play the point out. But every time I feed the ball, I'm going to feed it as a lob. All 4 players back, I feed it as a lob, play the overhead, and I'll play it out. You have to hit overheads. If we have junior tennis players, we force people. If you're with us, if we're training you and you don't go to the net and practice, you don't practice. I mean, it's like, no, you're not going to serve and volley. So no, go sit down. Now, we're working with players. Dave Secker, who was on one of our podcasts, somebody who's studied our content, with Simon Ershaw. They're doing a great job at NC State. Simon's the head coach and David's the assistant coach. And I think they've gone from 160 to 6. And, they're meeting players that are 18 years old and they're going, okay, at least play 2 bounce doubles. We like to train where it says 1 bounce doubles and everybody crashes the net. The only time the ball bounces is for the return. And you could do sort of things where, okay, no poaching, 1 bounce doubles, no poaching, everybody comes in. And you can do it initially where you serve underhand. You can get 6 people playing tennis like that, three against 3, and you rotate very quickly and you chart it. People are playing more tennis with 6 people on a court than 4. But you have to really calculate or chart, do your homework on how many net appearances. If people only come to the net every other month, they're not going to be confident. So this sounds like a good game that people can try if they are uncomfortable going to the net. This 1 or 2 bounce doubles, right? So we've had a Facebook post for over 10 years. We put up something every day, and a mission or a vision would be if teaching pros would say, all right, everybody play 10 minutes of 1 bounce doubles. My son played on the tour for a while. I get to be 200 in the world. And I said, why at the end of your practice, where the one player says, the other player, you good? Yeah, I'm good. I go, hey, why don't you just play one game each of ghost doubles? The one-on-one doubles. Ed Krass has done a very good job with the one-on-one doubles where, I really think there should be a tennis line all the way down the middle of the court.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I was a college coach, I would say we're going to have a deuce court tournament. We're going to have an ad court tournament, and you have to serve and volley. If you set the directives, you can have some fun doing that.
Yeah, those sound like some good games. So that's one I tell people to play a lot is those cross court doubles points. Because if you can win that cross court rally, then the odds of you winning the match go way up. And then this one bounce double sounds like a good one. So that, to clarify for the listeners, that means you serve, the ball bounces, they hit the return, and the ball is not allowed to bounce again for the rest of the point.
Yeah.
If it does bounce on your side, you lose the point. Is that how you play it?
Yeah. With little kid tennis in the U.S., with red ball tennis, you can do it at a really young age. If the ball bounces the second time, you lose the point.
You lose the point. Yeah. So you can do one bounce or two bounce. Okay. That's a great game for people to try. So let's move on to return strategy. So how do you think about, it sounds like you're a fan of the serve and volley on the serving side. How do you think about return strategy for a 3-5 level player?
Well, it comes back to technique.
Okay.
Back to technique, where I said you can look at someone in the ready position, and if they're waiting today, which is very common, is they wait with an extreme grip. So I'm right-handed, and the rackets, I'm waiting, and I'm in this position. I tell people all the time, why don't you watch Djokovic's ready position? So a Vandermeer line, the interrelationship of strokes, the interrelationship of spins. So if someone has a racket in a centered position, the ready position for a righty turning to the right, it's a forehand volley. You back the ready position, you turn for volley, you continue the turn, and then you have the backswing.
Okay.
Dennis Vandermeer, what he used to do in doubles clinics is that he'd spend some time on the throwing motion and teach the serve, and then he would teach the volley, and he'd say, let's play doubles. Let's play doubles. And that comes back to, even having the approach shot in club tennis. They say, okay, there's no poaching for now, and the return of serve is going to be like a volley. It's like a volley with an added follow through. So anytime you think of returns, you have to think of short, compact. The ball's going to be faster and faster. The best players in the history of the game have spent obviously hours on a ball, on a backboard. Agassi's a little bit different because he had that souped up ball machine feeding him balls. But you really have to have a very short, compact motion. So you have the option, like Roger Federer turns in his racket, we say like a wall to the ball. So that's where Roger, he has the skills, where Wawrinka and the Fed, they're not even playing doubles as single specialists. Right. And then they rock up and they win the gold medal at the Olympics. That's because they have the skills. One year, Pete Sampras, Tom Gullickson used him to play doubles, and he had played doubles in years and years. And but first of all, he had a great serve, but he had the skills. He had the skill to play doubles.
He had all the tools.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say, so one thing a lot of people ask, let's stick with that 3-5 player. I get emails from people saying I'm having trouble holding my serve in doubles. What should I do?
Well, we always say you need two things to be a serve volley. You need a serve and you need a volley. But to hold serve, you have to get a high percentage of serves in. Okay. Like say a 3-0 player to me is a beginning player, just like a young junior player. Right-handed players in the deuce court, almost every second serve goes out wide and most likely 85% of players are right-handed. They're playing it against a righty. Right. Why does it go? Again, it's technical reasons. The brain's a fifth of second ahead of the hit. So players sneak a peek. They shift their head to see the flyaway ball before they've even hit it. And then the head is inch for inch heaviest part of the body. So then the trunk starts to go, because biomechanics used to say if the neck bone's connected to the backbone's connected to the hip bone. So the body shifts like this. The body's the leader. So they can't direct their serve. So
Hmm.
they really need to understand the serve.
So they look too quick. They look to see where it's going too
Yeah, no,
fast.
they definitely sneak a peek.
Oh,
And
okay.
but
Interesting.
also too is that the serve and the overhead, when you hit a tennis ball, you're blind to your target. You're on when no matter what shot it is. It's a forehand volley, you're not looking at your target. It's an overhead, you're not looking at your target. But when you hit an overhead, which is an abbreviated serve, so overhead is the serves, well, you swing away from your target. And it's very difficult to conceptualize. But
Right.
3-0 players don't do that. Young beginning players, junior adult, they don't do that. They swing towards their target.
Hmm.
And that's where 85% of players have some version of palm up. So I think of Peter Burwash, he used to teach, the Ilie Nastase backfire. He'd have people turn their back to the net and serve this way. So then they have their arm loose, and they'd be doing that with a continental grip.
Okay.
Vandermeer had a great drill, and we actually have kids do it on a regular basis. We just call it the Vandermeer, where you have kids serve and they bring the racket behind their back like this.
Hmm.
Um, and now they they have the edge of the racket going this way, and they're learning to hit a spin serve.
Yeah.
Um, that's a big difference when someone becomes a 4 or 5 player. That actually years and years ago, you had to go through a clinic to be verified to be a rater. Now you self-rate. But in the fine print years ago, the description was once you become a 4 or 5 player, then you can hit spin on your serve.
Hmm.
The players below that, they're basically hitting underspin serves. They're just guiding their serve in the box. And again, Braden, 100 quotes from Braden, it's like throwing up a grenade and running underneath it. If you can't serve and your serve is, just a helium ball, just going so slow over the net, you're not going to run in behind it. So you really
Hmm.
have to do due diligence. But for the most part, get myself in trouble. But the tennis teaching industry in this country, it's more service based than it is education based.
Right.
For coming back to my former student, where you're going to take lessons for a year before you play. There's really no instant tennis. Someone doesn't take piano lessons and then go to the recital.
Yeah.
But that's how tennis is taught pretty much at the club level. Let's make it social. And I used to do these clinics for All American Sports back in the 70s where it was supposed to be a wine and cheese round robin. But I've been coaching all day. I made a wine and cheese with a few beers for these adult campers.
Uh-huh.
We got to practice, a little bit of practice. Just having that edge go up like this and then turning the racket. You got to be able to hit spin on the serve.
So that's the difference in your mind between that 4-0 to 4-5. As far as holding serve, they need to get the technique right and hit a little more spin
Yeah,
on their
no,
serve, or at
it's
least be
definitely
able to.
it's what you can do with the ball. One year in Texas, I was
Yeah.
in Texas for 10 years, and a group of men. They were, I believe, they were a group of 4 or 5 men. It might have been 4 O's. I think it was 4 or 5, and they asked us to go through training for nationals. And at that time, Craig Tyler was very well known in tennis. He was a student of ours for a long time. I mean, I think that's unfair. He's a student assistant. He was there 7 years. And he got to the point where he could replicate my skills to a certain level, but then he had his own set of skills. And I can remember him doing body composition, and okay, guys, we got to get on the fat farm. So we really went through fitness. So the group of guys went out. I think it was in Arizona, and it was nationals, and they had people walking around in an officials, and 3 of them were told that they were sandbagging, that hey, you guys aren't 4 5s, you guys are 5 O's. So that's another thing too. I mean, I've run one of workout sessions where just pump out a lot of balls. I don't think a lot of people know I can do that. Is that I have some feeding techniques I've learned over the years, and we can pump out some balls very quickly. And we used to call it, want to workout, stress buster, and with we would have people come based on their fitness level.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that ties into it. So movement. So yeah, that has another.
So you took.
It's not just stroke production.
Yeah. So you took this group of 4-0 or 4-5 players, and in a few months before nationals, you had them get to nationals improve so much that the refs at nationals accuse
Yeah.
them of
So no,
sandbagging?
it was more like 6 months. It was more like
Six
six
months.
months.
Okay. Okay.
The thing was okay, guys, we practiced before school. So this was before
Mhm.
kids were homeschooling. We practiced before school, so you can meet us in really early hours in the morning, then go off to your job, and then you can come every afternoon. You can just
Okay.
join in with the juniors, train like a junior, and
Oh,
then
interesting.
we're trained
Okay.
on the weekends. And
Yeah.
they had family commitments and this and this. It wasn't like they could
Sure.
come every time, but
They were playing several days a week.
that yeah, but that doesn't happen with adult tennis. Where okay,
Sure.
let's we did body fat. That's where it's highly. He got a degree in kinesiology, and you
Yeah.
know, I bought the equipment, and it's like, okay, we'll see kind of shape you
See
guys
how
are in.
it goes.
Beer is liquid bread,
Right.
and yeah, so a lot of
That's a good
adult
story.
players are a little overweight.
So, a couple other questions, and then I want to get into some of the rapid fire stuff. How have you've been coaching a long time? How have you seen doubles change over the years?
Well, um, one thing that hasn't changed is the myth on who plays where. Say in mixed doubles,
Hmm.
the the deuce court player takes more returns, or I should say, let me say it correctly, they do take more returns. The deuce
Yeah.
court player, if you chart, they play more balls. So you and I are playing doubles, and we play 5 points. You're in the deuce court, I'm in the ad court. So you've played three, I played two. Now when we return again, you're taking return number four, and I'm still at return number two.
Right.
Plus, 85% of players are right-handed. 85% of players have been mistaught to hit a volley with an open racket face that faces the deuce court. The 85% is a good rule. That many players are looking to run around their backhand. Right-handed players, 85%, and that 85% of the time they're running around, they're trying to avoid a backhand and hit a forehand like this. And they're pulling horizontally. They're a little bit late. They don't get the racket underneath. And what happens in baseball, if a kid can't catch, they put him in right field.
Hmm.
The kid who's picking their nose or picking dandelions, they put him in right field. And so the myth in tennis is the better player should play the ad court, but the deuce court determines whether you're ad in or ad out. Like the other
Right.
day, Austin Krajicek is talking to his dad this morning. So they get
Hmm.
to Cincinnati. He was just in the Olympics. I mean, he's an NCAA doubles champion. Gets along with
Yeah.
everybody. He can play both the right side and the left side, deuce
Hmm.
and ad. So he's playing with Stevie Johnson, who's the most decorated college tennis player.
Right.
And I mean, Stevie's hitting, talking about 3-5. He's in a 3-5 backhand.
Hmm.
I mean, he's running around, and that was his first choice, and he leaves the court so exposed. The
Hmm.
next thing is he's hitting these 3-5 lobs, and then he just started to try to punch it. And I mean, and again, great tennis player, but he doesn't hit a backhand very
Doesn't
well.
really have a backhand. Yeah.
If he was playing Sampras in his day, you think, well, Sampras could serve the backhand and volley to the backhand. Stevie Johnson's growing up in an era where he's not playing against people who can serve to the backhand and volley to the backhand. He's playing against people who don't even volley. So, I mean, it's a set point, and Stevie takes the return. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Well, so there's things that remain the same. A tennis
Hmm.
player should learn to play both sides. But modified doubles, where you play systematically. So the I formation,
Hmm.
where you serve the middle, the rackets are. You say the rackets are bigger. The rackets are more powerful, and therefore they serve straight ahead. Gonzalez was one of the first players to do that. He came right in, stood by the center hash mark, and
Yeah.
he gave him a better alignment as a righty to serve the backhand, and then you just veer off this way. But Tiriac with Vilas, he's given a lot of credit for the I formation, where he was older, in his early 40s. Vilas is in his early 20s.
Uh-huh.
And Vilas, he'd have Vilas at the net, and he'd have him down like in the sprinter's position. And he's got his hand signals. Is he going to go right or is he going to go left? So
Hmm.
that's definitely something that's happened. But, again, I don't want to pick on like a John Isner or a Sam Querrey. They play one up, one back doubles. I mean, they're both giants, and they have giant
Right.
serves.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? Alex Damajan He's a very good player. He won so many junior tournaments. He did well in college tennis, and he like an Isner or Query, big tall guy. I was at the NCAAs and I was sitting next to Dick Gould, who I don't really know that well, but certainly I know him all the years. You see someone for a few minutes, start talking to him, and I said, "Yeah, Virginia's got a guy. He's playing three doubles. He's close to 7 feet tall. He's going to be serving, staying back." And I forgot I had told him that. Now, Gould won 17 national championships. I get this thump, and he goes, "You're right. I can't believe it. That guy is serving and staying back." And here's one of my fun story. One of my favorite stories is Steve Denton, who we were flattered. He hired us to teach him to teach tennis. He was number 2 in the world in doubles, 11 in singles, and he was playing against Agassi and Krickstein. And Agassi's serving, he tosses the ball way over his head. He serves, stays back. It's the beginning of the match. Steve Denton just catches the ball and goes, "Really? Like, you're really going to serve and stay back?" I think with the Bryans having retired, serve and volley doubles is becoming extinct. There's so many lost arts. Tennis is in a crisis. Because people want to win. They want to win at every level. And we know now it's not muscle memory, it's brain memory. If someone's programmed to stay back, if they don't start from the get-go going to the net, They won't have the instincts. Yeah. In club tennis, I think recreational tennis and competitive tennis, fair enough. You can say, okay, on your second serve, you want to stay back, but the very first ball, you got to come in. One thing I'd want to share with your listeners is, have you ever heard of the triangle in doubles, to run the triangle, one up, one back?
I don't think so. Maybe, but not by that term.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case. Is teams playing one up, one back. Typically in, the husband-wife doubles. So what do you do if your partner can't play? Well, you get a new partner. Well, what if it's my husband? So in the courting stage, the husband, the marriage is going on, and the macho male ego, he'd like to have the woman stand outside the court, and he could cover the whole court. So it's like guard your alley. When someone says guard your alley, that means they don't know how to play.
Right.
And then you got the court hog covering the whole court. But when you're playing the triangle, you serve, then the person at the net, they try to poach, so the return goes cross court. They go towards the net strap, and they don't quite get to the ball. But then as the ball goes back to your partner who's staying back, you recover and you go to the hot seat. Vandermeer used to call it the hot seat. Is you plug up the middle. In doubles, you want to concede the most difficult angle. You can't cover the entire court, even 2 players. So you're forcing play to the outside. So now your partner hits the ball and you're plugging up the middle. And now the ball goes by the net person. And once it goes by the net person, you, as the partner of the returner, you go forward. So your movement goes like this. It's a triangle. You're trying to poach. You don't quite get there. Now the ball's gone by you, so you go back. Now once the ball goes by your opposing net person, you go forward. So it goes like this. The worst thing is someone playing doubles, club doubles. And again, I don't think that's fair to club players, because now Division I college tennis, you see these girls, for example, that's got to be the easiest money in pro tennis. And the boys, they're going down fast too. You see these players, UCLA and Arizona, Texas, these really good athletes. Yeah. And they're playing 3-5 lady doubles because they don't know where to stand. That's a good line my son Connor had. He played doubles pretty well, and people would say, "Gee, you play doubles well." And he had a good line to just be humble and say, "Well, it's not that I play doubles that well. I just know where to stand." Right. And I say, well, you could say, "I know where to stand, and I know how to hang onto the racket." The kids return to serve and they're waiting like this, and then they end up, because they have this extra movement, they take the distance and they go further from the baseline. That's the last thing you want to do. Yeah, because the further you are from the baseline, the more time your opposing net person has to read the return. But I think maybe I got away from your question, but has doubles really changed? With the top players don't play. Billie Jean King fought for so many causes, and she's been successful with some. Some of her fights, she wasn't successful. In the early age groups, boys and girls should play the same age group. And now we have less people playing competitive tennis in America. And that's a way where the UTRs fail up at this point, that tournaments are not genderless and ageless like they should be. The UTR, girls should be able to play boys. If you're a 9-0, you should be able to play. And I understand that they are doing some of that. They need to do more of that. But she also, not only did she fight for equal prize money for women, she was really fighting for more equal prize money for doubles. Yeah. And wouldn't it be great if someone as great as Roger Federer or even Djokovic, and Djokovic would be a better player, and that'd be scary, that if there was a combined ranking, if the money was distributed where, it could be done where, well, whoever is doing, like Stefan Edberg and John McEnroe, number one in both singles and doubles, and they weren't rewarded financially for that. It could be set up as the meetings of the minds would do that, but the true power brokers in tennis are the people who are the best players, and the best players. The conversations leave going in the other direction, like where does all the money go? A doubles team, for the most part, in doubles, 20% of the money goes to doubles, and then you got to split it. So that really started back with Jimmy Connors. Jimmy Connors won the U.S. Open playing doubles. He won Wimbledon playing doubles. But then it was like, hey, Bjorn Borg, as a young teenager, he played doubles well enough where Sweden won Davis Cup. But they said, forget it. I'm making so much money playing singles. And I think that's really bad for the game. It's unfortunate. So all the people that make decisions, you would even think that someone like, say, Federer, he could do and granted, he's older in his family, but it should even be where, okay, Roger, you're 40 years old, that he could come out and still make a pretty penny. And his ball striking skills, that he shows up and, there's
who knows how much longer he could play if he was a professional doubles player,
he doesn't want to travel the tour. Sure. He wants to, maybe his kids are going to go from having a tutor to go to regular school, whatever. Yeah. But,
and there's personal reasons, but
it's really so sad that people love doubles, they play doubles, and then
they watch singles.
It's not even, for the most part, it has gotten a little bit better with, at one time, the tournament directors, they want to totally drop doubles. Yeah. Bryan Brothers needed to get a big pat on the back for that. Yeah. That's where they changed the scoring format, where they went to no ad and then the 10-point tiebreaker. And that was where they could be, the doubles players could be on TV sometime and be on more show courts. The Labor Cup, one thing that's really exciting about the Labor Cup is the scoring format. But yeah, all the alphabet soup, if people could get together, doubles needs to be saved. I think it's great that you have a podcast. But I don't really pigeonhole it where I really think that there's not that much of a difference between working with 3-5 doubles and pro doubles. The other day, Stevie Johnson, for example, anytime he starts scrambling around, so he's trying to hit a forehand, he puts himself way out of position. He plays these fantastic shots, but there was one point in particular where he basically ends up running off the court, taking a step up where he's almost in the stand, scrambles back, and then he puts his arms up, beat his hand against the chest, and I'm going, everybody loves it. He loves it. It's a great show, great theater. But the reason he had to do all that is that he was out of position, hit the wrong shot. Right. But then, then can you actually, and I think that's one of the problems too, is that it's amazing at the pro level that there's a lot of romancing. It's like in college tennis when kids are recruited. That the other day I was watching Kevin Anderson. I think it was obscene, really. Kevin Anderson, he's practicing, one of the hardest workers in tennis, Wimbledon finalist, US Open finalist. We're down in Boca. And we've had a lot to do with people working at the Delray Beach Tennis Center. We just happened to be there to meet someone. So we're sitting on the bleachers having a meeting. We're watching Anderson practice. And, he's South African. And I saw where you had Jeff Kotsier as one of your guests on his program. Jeff lived with us when he was a young kid. So with one time with Kevin Anderson, Craig Tiley was at Illinois. So he leaves, and then Brad Dancer's there. And I knew that Kevin was looking for a coach. So I just called Brad. sent him an email and said, Kevin Anderson should hire Raven Clausen. Clausen spent 5 years with us. He actually can teach tennis. He has information. He's one of the most knowledgeable guys on the tour. Mm-hmm. And, but he's just a double specialist. So who's going to believe that? But, if you were to say it even to a group of college coaches, all right, we're going to have a tournament on who can teach a beginner. We're going to take touring pros and who could teach a beginner. So Kevin and his father at that time, he was very young. They offered Clausen the job to be the coach. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, that's an idea that I was proud of, but Raven was still playing some singles. Mm-hmm. But that would have been great for Kevin because he would have had a technician in his corner. It would have been great for Raven because Raven could have played doubles with such a big server. And yeah. I think something like that Kevin, so close, I think that if he had a Raven Clausen in his corner coaching him, Raven played team tennis with Taylor Fritz, and Fritz's parents asked Raven if he would coach him, and the Raven said that he was still playing. I said, Raven, you just needed to give him some lessons, work with him 1 week here or 3 days here. Yeah. But if you watch Clausen play, he's somebody who rebuilt his game as a teenager. And, like say, for example, how he hits a backhand volley. That most players, even though they're world class, they have so much calculation on the backhand side because they just weren't grinded on it from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, he's a really great doubles player and fun player to watch as well. So people should definitely check him out when he's on.
Yeah, he's been dumped a couple of times. Rajiv Ram, who's so successful, and then the New Zealander who played at LSU. He was in the Wimbledon final with Raven. Help me out. Anyway, Raven's he's been dropped a little bit because people are looking for someone who has a great serve. I really think that's another thing too, is that they do it in pro baseball. Michael Venus, they do it in baseball. Yeah. Well, is that they should have a modified racket. Maybe not quite for the women yet, although that should change perhaps around the corner. But that would bring tennis back in tennis when you've got people that are hitting 135, 140 mile serves, and it's in some ways it's taking the tennis out of tennis. Some people, I take the challenge away from it, but
that's interesting. Yeah, I was having a argument or conversation with somebody, I guess, the other day about this, and we were wondering like what rules would we change if we did. And I think, at least for me, one is I would take lets away on serves, because I don't understand why we play lets on serves, but the whole rest of the point, we don't redo the point if it hits the net. We just play it out. But another one that might help.
College tennis, they play a let, as you know. On the men's side, why they play the let is there's so many.
Because they cheat.
It's a different level of cheating. Instead of saying that was a let.
Yeah.
There's been some.
But that's one, and then another one would be if they just got rid of the second serve. Like what would that do to like John Isner? I don't know.
Well, they did that one time with Gonzalez.
Yeah, they did.
They said he just serves too well. It was a tournament in Cleveland. They said it was just a one serve. All he got was one serve. And he won it even easier because he had such a good second serve. With there's only been a couple of rule changes in the history of tennis, and one was you had to stay flat-footed. You couldn't jump. You couldn't be uncoiling on the serve. If they were to go back to that, but I really think some people even said based on your height, for every 6 inches you got to go back 6 inches.
That'd be interesting.
So John Isner, he's got to serve 12 more inches.
Serve from
I think modifying the racket would be.
Way to do
people would be up in arms, and can you imagine? But the players are the power brokers. Say, okay, there's one standard racket. With like saying pole vaulting, they used to try to pole vault with a bamboo pole. Well, then they went to fiberglass and graphite. So technology has changed. But it's not high jumping. It's how many balls are being hit. They changed the grass at Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And the very first year they changed the grass, now Bandy and Hewitt were in the final, and there were 0 serve and volley points. And I
Yeah.
think that was something too. They took the contrast out of tennis, where it used to be to go from the French on red clay and then a couple weeks later be playing on the grass. But now players are playing the same style on all 4 surfaces.
Yeah.
With like a couple years back, I mean, Query, obviously, I'm not taking shots at a guy that good, but where he beats Djokovic.
Mm-hmm.
And as great as Djokovic is, well, if he's having a real bad day, like, does he have options? Where, I mean, he one time played in a match where he lost. He had played 253 points before he served volley. Andy Roddick was the best tennis player in America for close to a decade. One time in a Davis Cup match, as Patrick McEnroe, you could hear it with the courtside mic, and said, "Why do you serve volley?" He serves the volleys. But he played 5 sets on a hard court in California and didn't serve and volley once. And he's just dropping bombs.
Yeah.
But, he doesn't have a very good volley. His technique on his volley. I mentioned Austin Krajicek, tennis singer, is a fun guy. And he's had a pretty solid career. And they're both, I think, 30, 31 years old, 31. Mm-hmm. And so they're in the Olympics, and they're playing for a medal. And I can remember he had a hip operation, and he left his car at my place. And then I've never coached him for a second, but I was around him when I was with Austin, because they were playing doubles on the tour. And I said, "Tennis, when you come back," I said, "pro bono, I'll help you with your volley." And, but I think players are very suspicious. The higher level a player becomes, the more people talk to him.
Yeah.
And, again, it's not like you said, as far as other sports. I mean, there's not so many different ways to come out of the starting blocks. There's not so many different ways to stand on the foul line and Michael Jordan shadow swinging like this with his palm. Or a golfer is not going to go, "Hey, coach." Of course, their coach, it's not, you don't really even know who the coach is, a swing coach or like a baseball player. They do hit off a tee in baseball. For 15 years, I taught right next to where the Yankees practice. But somebody's not going to take a putter and go, "Hey, coach, I think I should do this with my putter instead of just go like this." Yeah. So the strength of the individual comes out. There'll always be individuality, but style is the problem. I say this and I'm flattered to be asked to be on your podcast. I'm very repetitive. Just drive home some certain points. When Crummy plays crummier, who wins? Crummy wins, but Crummy doesn't know they're crummier. And that's where we have kids come in, they fly in, and someone's told them to come and work with us, and we have a drill called the tiebreaker test, and you have to hit 6 shots at designated targets to score 1 point. We have some kid come in, they're just happened a week ago, they're top 10 in their section. This is a young player. They're 07 on the tiebreaker test. Well, in other sports, the way you talk to a kid is like, if you were a basketball player and you were in a boat, you couldn't hit water. But what happens is that the customer's always right. One of my friends who's in the service business in tennis has done really well. Well, his business, the customer's always right. With me, the customer, they tease and say the customer's always wrong. Kid comes in and go, no. Even the recruiting process in college tennis is, "Oh, you can come to our place. You don't have to come in the first fall of your freshman year. Just come in January. Yeah. Plus, what we're going to do is send you to pro tournaments." And that's not what I would be telling. If I was at Kalamazoo, and I've been there many times, had my students win Kalamazoo or San Diego. Actually, speaking about doubles, San Diego, Dave Anderson spent years with Ashton Kruger. She just won doubles, won 6-1, 6-0. She won the singles. She gets to play both singles and doubles US Open.
Yeah.
She's not going to the net as much as she used to. And that's, to me, that's a crisis. And for her, someone should just say, "Hey, that's going to be the easiest money in your career." And she should play doubles. Not too long ago, Tsitsipas signed up for the Italian Open, and people paid attention to that. If you play doubles, you're working on your return, you're working on your service motion, you're working on your net appearances. Yeah. People become better singles players by playing doubles. I know the years ago, and Andy Fitzell's always talking about this, is that the ball's coming almost twice as fast, and he'll rattle off the numbers for that. But years ago, the best players would play all three events at the Grand Slams. But now, I'm just playing singles.
Yeah, there's just too much money in it. It's
money, but also, especially on a hard court. It's like when Nadal finally won in Australia. He said, now, and this is such a classy guy, what great character. Nadal said, now that I've won on a hard court, I'll say this. We need to have less tennis played on a hard court, because he said, when I'm older, I want to be able to play, his word for it, football, play soccer with his friends and his family when he's an older man. So a lot of pounding. And now you see a lot of kids, I should say pros, they hit the open stance forehand. They have a lot of problems with their right hip. But junior tennis doubles is really an afterthought. We're 5.5 miles right now from the national campus, and there's a doubles tournament coming up. There's a national tournament, and they have the different age groups: 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and you really could count on your hand. Just walk around. Okay, I'm going to spend. I'm here. Just had breakfast. I'm going to stay till lunch.
Check out the courts.
Spend half a day here, and you could bet someone. Okay, are you going to see 5 players? You're going to see definitely less than 10 players that serve the volley.
Yeah,
and
you definitely will.
So, no, I think Braden has his tape. Go for a winner. Fantastic doubles. Mixed doubles is a fantastic adventure, but it's really everything that's on that tape that was made in the 70s. One take, amazing tape. All those principles are exactly the same. The principles are the same with stroke production. The dimensions of court, physical laws dictate stroke production. No coach's opinion, any unique theory. So with it's just unfortunate. People want to win the 2-inch trophy. The teaching pro also, they want to keep the customer happy. I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure. Make everybody happy. And people don't want to lose, but Bill Tilden, tennis players are born out of defeat. Virginia Wade, winning tennis doesn't lead to beautiful tennis, but beautiful tennis leads to winning tennis. Roger Federer, he made a list when he's a kid. ENTP, he's a planner. Vic Braden said, how'd you become so good? He said, well, I made a list of all the shots I needed to be able to hit. Plus, he had a secondary motive that he talks about. I'm, Roger Federer geek. I've read so much and listened.
Okay.
Roger Federer, any of the top players, you've been in the game as long as I have, is Roger Federer had a motive that he wanted to look good. With Andy Roddick.
He accomplished that.
Andy Roddick. Roger Federer is an artist, a technician. I just have to hit the crap out of the ball. But by the time Andy came on the scene, as great a player as he is, or you go back a different era, Michael Chang, Andre Agassi, Jim Courier, they weren't going to be asked to play doubles. At one time, the United States, and they took too long. The U.S. Davis Cup team, they took too long to ask the Bryan brothers. They were very polite guys and classy. They handled it very well. Yeah. They took too long to ask them to play. I think it was Chris Woodruff from Tennessee. I mean, they were just reaching for, and he was more of a backcourt player and a good tennis player. But I think tennis teachers should be united too. I think that's another thing too, is that what we have is really wrong, is that we have merchants of flesh. We've got people get into business because they can hit the ball. The consumer doesn't have consumer knowledge. They think it's a shortcut if their kid starts taking lessons from someone who's got a little bit of a playing background. And then they're out at the weekend tournaments handing out business cards to kids who can already play. And, then what happens is it's like no one wants to teach the beginner. And that's where the numbers of tennis are going down. And that's where it's like, no, it's cool to teach beginners. How many tennis players actually come from your club? Yeah, I would say that too many people at the grassroots level. I understand college tennis to a certain extent not having as much development as it should. But okay, they're recruiting players, and okay, I'm going to work within a player's game because they weren't taught. They have these very inefficient grips, but they're going to be a grinder for me. They're going to play 6 doubles. They're going to come get an accounting degree, and they're not going to play doubles. Okay, they're going to win for your flag, for your college. But no, it really needs, that line that we use often, no substitute for a good beginning. But double should be important. Learning skills to play all court tennis should be important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it is interesting to I want to talk more about this maybe another time. Maybe we do a round two, but um yeah, the you said no one wants to teach the beginners, and I think that kind of makes sense to me if a lot of the coaches don't have a good kind of foundation or system for teaching beginners, then they would probably get frustrated doing it because
Right.
they wouldn't see success with it, right? If they don't
It's
know
like,
how to do it.
it's like a college athletic director. For the most
Hmm.
part, they know football.
Hmm.
Maybe it's basketball. It's like
Sure.
the university is a football university, is a basketball university.
Right.
But it's a pretty safe bet they don't know tennis. And they're
Yeah.
going to hire somebody who comes from a winning tradition. So young coaches
Sure.
now, they're not really thinking so much about being mentored by someone who can really teach and coach. They want to get
Hmm.
connected, one of the Power Five conferences, a team that's doing well,
Interesting.
and
It's
a
more of like a
director.
PR hire a lot of the time, I
Yeah,
guess.
very good. Yeah,
Interesting.
very well put. A director, a general manager at a club, they hire somebody with playing credentials. Credentials,
Yeah.
credibility. Credibility means you're believable, doesn't mean you're truthful. So what
Yeah.
happens is that that director gets a salary. They get a percentage of everybody who's working around them.
Hmm.
They hire personalities, keeps everybody happy, make it fun. Customer's always right. And then they put the least experienced, they get a high school player with a personality, and they're teaching the
Yeah.
tots, they're teaching the little kids. And that's where coming back to the governing body of tennis, let's see how you're doing here. How
Yeah.
many players have you produced? And we know that players shop and bop and be difficult to regulate, but
Sure.
that term united, there's the PTR changed professional tennis. They were going by USPTR, and I've been a member
Hmm.
forever of the tester. The USPTA United is, I think the internet. Dave Fish is such a bright guy from Harvard. He thinks these podcasts are great formats to have a conversation and people start to listen. Well, so much bad information is going out so fast with all these, and I don't really like being on social media so much. And we're not charging fees to be a YouTube guru
Sure.
on the serve. I can teach you to hit your serve 10, 15 miles an hour faster. And here are the first three secrets. But if you want the four remaining secrets, we need your credit card. It's $450 worth of instruction, but for right now, you can have it for $90, and you
Yeah.
have it till midnight tomorrow. And it's like WCP,
That's a pretty
WCP.
good pitch. Where can I buy?
I'm just telling you what's out there. There's no
Yeah, that is
originality.
what's out there.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it says.
But WC Fields, there's a sucker born every minute, and
Hmm.
the consumer needs to have consumer knowledge. The teacher needs to have product knowledge, and if there's product, that means you can produce a product. And that, with your doubles podcast, yeah, we need to have people learn a proper service motion. They need to be able to hit spin on their serve. They need to be able to come in
Hmm.
1, 2, 3 split and move forward through their volley. But I think people are just, the term spin, people are just putting a different spin on it and they're calling it theirs.
Yeah.
And that's just the opposite of what we're doing with grateful for Andy Fitzell and his wife doing so much over the last 2 years. We've done a lot of work together, but or now the more people know that the great base is not quote unquote. I mean, it was Steve Smith stuff or now Steve and Andy stuff, and it's based on homework. And
Yeah.
um, what we lost, the NTRP hasn't been perfect. The
Hmm.
NTRP has been very good model for social business. We don't have youth versus veteran matches anymore. It used to be that young kids would play um, adults,
Older
veterans.
players. Yeah.
And so you're playing some doubles, and it's like, okay, come to the net, kid, come to the net.
Yeah.
And now kids don't play with adults. They're not. They used to take a private lesson and call Mr. Johnson up, say, hey, would you play with me once a week? And you don't really see that. So,
Yeah.
um, I think the UTR. There's a
UTR
lot of
is
things.
kind of doing a little bit of it. It seems
I
like.
think here in Florida,
Hmm.
kids aren't really traveling so much. It's amazing what's going on in the south of Florida.
Hmm.
Everybody's there just playing UTR tournaments. That's where the
Wow.
competition is. And,
Interesting.
maybe that changes in a couple of years from now, but, Dave Howell put the math together, but Dave Fish was really the person who launched the famous white paper. And he had so much to do with being the father of the UTR. But the UTR is really not a rating now; it's a ranking. If someone tells you they're a 9.2 or a 9.25, that's a ranking. And to me, and I help in the initial stages. I used to write for a magazine called Tennis Life, and I said, well, it's $1,000 a match. It's $1,000 a T-shirt. Kids shouldn't be getting on an airplane. The USTA used to have, there never was level 2s and level 3s. It was just level 1s. So kids played more at home. And then it was almost like the checkbook system, and it would be this bad. This is, exaggerating as well. There's a tournament in Honolulu, and you're living in Boston or vice versa, and you're waiting to see if you make the cut. Well, the tournament in Honolulu, that was the easiest one to get in. So some kids in Boston going, Mom, can I go? Can I go? And they're going to a national tournament, and there's so much money being spent. So that's something that needs to happen. Besides your promotion of doubles, tennis needs to be less expensive to learn how to play and less expensive to play. And I do think that people that are in charge of tennis courts should have missionary zeal for getting young kids to play with old kids, and like, let's have a tournament. Let's have a Ed Krass has what he calls the one-on-one ghost doubles. That's how the best players in the world play. I'm specializing in the deuce court house. My partner plays ad court, and I remember watching Bob Hewitt and Fru McMillan years ago. That's how the best players play when they practice. They're specializing in that deuce court or ad court. So that's something that should really be promoted, the one-on-one doubles, but also youth versus veteran matches. And then fun opportunities. Okay, why can't we have we have a serve and volley tournament? You have to serve and volley both balls. Yeah. And, Tommy Haas actually with Ed Krass at one time said, well, with ghost doubles, to make it more successful, and Tommy had a really good point as far as business goes, is let people serve and stay back playing ghost doubles now. And it's, to me, the term is don't sell out for money. Hold true to your principles, and the Ed Krass one-on-one doubles. It's like, let's serve and go. And if a kid plays high school tennis as a freshman and they play 1-up, 1-back doubles, what are they going to do as a sophomore? It's not muscle memory, it's brain memory. They're conditioned, and they're being conditioned to play the wrong way. Right. I do give people knee-jerk reaction. A lot of people say, well, what do you think? What do you think of my kid's tennis game? And I said, well, the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming right at him. And change. We all know that change is very difficult. Change in anything.
It's uncomfortable for a lot of people, I think. Yeah. Coming to the net anyways, adding that to your game. Definitely uncomfortable for a lot of people. So we've been on an hour and a half, Steve. So I want to wrap it up here. Do you have any final requests for the audience? I think with your audience, love doubles, play doubles, call people up. I think that this is something that's very important. If everybody once a week would call somebody up that's a lesser player, the word superior, inferior, I think that's something to mention, not to digress, but typically what happens in doubles is two superior athletes playing an inferior system will win. So winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing. But one thing to share with your audience is that to break the tennis cliques is, I think, to be more altruistic, more giving, and say, once a week, I'm going to call somebody up. It could be a veteran player, an adult player. Find a way where adults and juniors can practice with one another. But if the 4 or 5 player once a week would call the 3-5 player up and go, hey, I learned this game, cross-court doubles, one-on-one doubles, one bounce doubles. Let's get together and play. Or even 50% tennis. You can have a 4 or 5 team playing against a 3-5 team, and the 4 or 5 team cannot hit a winner. You can only win with placement. So they're coming up to the net, and they're playing 50% tennis. One of the problems we have with tennis is the people running tennis, they found the air conditioning. They got out of the sun. They don't put on sunscreen anymore. And the people that are governing tennis teaching don't teach tennis anymore. So you have all these committees, and it's like, well,
when's the last time you gave a lesson? I have no problem saying Patrick McEnroe. At one time he was running Davis Cup. He was commentating on ESPN, and he was the general manager of player development. Now, he has an amazing background in tennis, played at Stanford, so some people say, well, he's in his brother's shadow. If you're playing tennis at Stanford, he won a Grand Slam title. His brother didn't hit the ball for him. So Patrick McEnroe, great. But he was a general manager, but he hadn't really been in the trenches. I think that's a problem. I think Wayne Bryan's been great for the game. And then he said that, said so many things about the private sector.
Yeah.
Well, I think you also have to look at every nook and cranny and go, how's the game being taught everywhere? And so Wayne Bryan, who's been in the trenches, I don't think that when he wrote his letter to the USTA and it really circulated, I think that's really been put off to the side. That it's not that the private sector is great, and the governing body of tennis, not just say the USTA, but in this country, the PTR and the USPTA, sure. The whole alphabet soup, the ITA. I mean, Dave Mullins with the ITA, he's reaching out and getting older coaches to talk to younger coaches. But people need to get in the room and go, okay, should we promote serve and volley doubles? Yes or no? Should we let it become a lost art?
Yeah,
it's a problem, and that's where, like, say, okay, I want to win. I don't want to be a losing coach, so I'm going to let this one kid from Slovenia who's on my team. I think of Blas Rola. He won 3 tournaments. Great guy, lefty, hard worker, handles himself so well with Chase Buchanan. They won 3 titles in college tennis, playing a 1-up, 1-back. And my son was a player at Ohio State. And for me, it's like, that's too bad, because that doesn't translate to those guys playing beyond college tennis, being able to play. So even though they won, it's like, well, really? I mean, they went to college to get better. And certainly, I think so much of Ty Tucker. You really helped my son out. So it's not a shot by any means at Ohio State, but fact-based instruction for long-term development. Yeah. I think it's really a problem with, say, you mentioned 3-0 tennis. I mean, if it should be this, I mean, it's really a charade that if you can coach a 3-0 player, one of our longtime students, Eric Overarm, he passed away, used to tease, say, I'm a 3-5 world-class coach. And but he could teach lights out. Yeah. But because he was teaching 3-5 ladies, he was typecast. And, he could be at a tennis conference, and it's like, there's a pretty good chance that Eric's there. There might be a couple people there that know more than he does. But, I mean, he's passed away now. But I think that's something, too, is that, the people that are surrounding world-class tennis players, it's like the other night with Kevin Anderson, having 4 people talk to him while he's hitting tennis balls. It's like, really, Kevin, at this point, you should be telling them. I mean, you should just know you're, I don't know, I think you may be 6'7", 6'8", that, you should know that you've been out here we've been watching practice for an hour and a half, and, you haven't hit an overhead yet. So how does that really differ than going to the 12 and under tournament? If the 64 10-year-olds plays a tournament, who wins? One 10-year-old. Get yourself in trouble. 64 idiots plays a tournament, who wins? One idiot. At a 10 and under tournament, who's the smartest person at a 10 and under who's the smartest person at a 10 and under tournament? It's the parent, whoever wins. So again, winning, go back to John Wooden principles from basketball. He never mentioned winning. Winning is a byproduct of skills. And so, I can ramble on for tennis, but I hope I have made some points of interest for your listeners.
Yeah, the stories are amazing. I mean, I could really listen, and I know you have even more, and I can listen all day. But let's wrap it up here, and maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime. I'll definitely include links to everything in the show notes, and people listening can find more on everything you're doing over at Great Base greatbasetennis.com, and we'll link to that as well. So thanks a lot, Steve, for joining us.
No, you're welcome. No, thank you.
If you're a doubles player, you'll love our weekly doubles newsletter. Every Thursday, we send you doubles tips and strategies to help you improve your game and become a smarter player. When you sign up, you'll get a free 10-page guide on how to play with more confidence and dominate at the net in doubles. You can go to thetennistribe.com to sign up now.